Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Podcast Boys. I am Connor Nielsen, one of your hosts, and the other half of the Podcast Boys is also with me, as always, the Comics Kid 2099. How you doing, Comics Kid?
I'm doing fantastic, Connor, and yourself?
You know, I'm doing A-okay. Today we're going to be talking about the last two episodes of the original series of Twin Peaks. This is episodes 21 and 22 of Season 2. These episodes are called Miss Twin Peaks and Beyond Life and Death. Fun fact about the episode titling, and I should probably say that we are reviewing these back-to-back because these two episodes, their original premiere nights were on the same night. So that's why we're going to be talking about them. I thought it'd be, me and Comics Kid both thought it'd be a cool little, experiment, nice way to finish talking about the original series before we talked about Fire Walk with Me. And I don't know if you knew this, Comics Kid, but there's an interesting story behind the way the episodes are titled. Did you ever hear that?
I had heard that David Lynch did not title the episodes and that someone else titled them after the series was done. Is that what you were going to say?
Yeah, that did happen, but the specifics are pretty interesting.
Oh, I haven't heard any of the specifics, no.
So Lynch and Frost did not title any of the episodes. They just gave them numbers. In fact, I would not be surprised if the episodes were titled Day 1, Day 2, Day 3, Day 4.
Yeah.
That wouldn't surprise me. But, so they didn't give them any titles. But when they aired in Germany, they did have titles for them. So there were, Cooper's Dreams, Realization Time, Arbitrary Law, Demons, Slaves and Masters. All of these were titles that were attributed to each individual episode when they were premiered in Germany.
Okay.
However, when they aired the last two episodes together, they aired it as one long broadcast. So they just called that one long broadcast Beyond Life and Death.
Oh, okay.
So this episode, the first one we're going to be talking about, Miss Twin Peaks, that was actually just a fan favorite title. It's like the fans kind of titled this episode Miss Twin Peaks. But when they aired them all individually later, they actually called this episode The Night of the Decision.
Okay.
But when you see it on Netflix or any other streaming service, and even if you buy the Twin Peaks, the entire mystery Blu-ray set, this episode is titled Miss Twin Peaks. I thought that was a fun little history and tidbit about the history of Twin Peaks.
Yeah, that is neat, and that's kind of cool that the fans were able to help kick in a little bit and help name a show or name one of the episodes.
And I'm glad it was this episode that got a title, because this is one of those. It's one about where the Miss Twin Peaks contest is at the center. So getting fans' involvement in this particular episode, I thought was actually kind of cool.
Yeah.
So, Comic Kid, you're going to give us the plot synopsis, so why don't you tell us about Miss Twin Peaks?
Alrighty. Do you want me to just talk about the first one and then do the plot synopsis for the next one later, or do you want me to just do them all together?
Let's do one and then the other, because I want to talk about that last episode as its own entity almost, because, yeah.
Okay, we can do that. Leo releases Major Briggs and asks him to go save Shelley. Audrey is sad that Billy Zane is gone, and then she gives her dad a report on the people involved with Catherine and the Ghostwood Project. Ben convinces Audrey to be a contestant in the Miss Twin Peaks competition. Thanks to listening in on Coop and Harry, Wyndham Earle figures out that fear is the key to entering the Black Lodge. Wyndham has left Leo in a death trap with a rope, a pulley, and some spiders in a cage. If Leo lets go of the rope with his mouth, the spiders will fall down on him and he will die. The Black Widow lady seduces Dick Tremaine in a closet. Cooper and Annie make love. When Ed and Norma tell Nadine that they are getting married, Nadine appears a little bit jealous, and she tells them that she and Mike are getting married too. Hawk finds Major Briggs. Andrew Packard finally opens the final box left to him and Catherine by Thomas Eckhart. It's a key. Donna confronts her parents about Ben Horne again. Cooper figures out that a conjunction between Saturn and Jupiter, which allows an opening into the Black Lodge, is happening very soon. They also figure out that while fear can open the Black Lodge, love can as well, and that Wyndham Earle is going to target the winner of the Miss Twin Peaks competition. Donna, with her exceptional detective skills, finds out that Ben Horne is her father, and we are all very shocked by that. Lucy chooses Andy to be the father of the baby, and we are all very shocked by that. Annie wins the Miss Twin Peaks competition. Yay! Wyndham Earle, dressed up as the log lady in mine and Connor's probably favorite moment in the series for a while, he kidnaps Annie, and Andy tells Cooper that the puzzle on the blackboard is actually a map to the Black Lodge. And that is the end of the first part of these two episodes. So, Connor, what did you think of this episode?
This episode is flawed. It has many a problem, I think. Not as good as The Path to the Black Lodge, which was the last episode. but I really liked it, and I think the main reason is because this episode, for me anyways, was a lot of fun.
Oh
I
yeah.
had a lot of fun while watching it, and I think that the director, Tim Hunter, especially when we're at the Miss Twin Peaks contest, knows just how to capture the liveliness of the air, and I think he does a good job with all of his camera setups, and I think that even Barry Pullman's script is kind of doing what Twin Peaks does, where it's a soap opera that's kind of making fun at soap operas in a satirical way, but in his script, we're having a Miss Twin Peaks pageant that is without a doubt a pageant, but also is taking jabs at pageants as a concept. So I thought that was a lot of fun to watch. And considering the next episode, the finale is very heavy and into the supernatural stuff and really getting into more ethereal territory, I thought it was really cool that we could just have some fun before going into the big heavy finale. What did you think?
I liked it. I didn't have any problems with it that I can think of. I mean, there was a few very minor things, like I would have loved it if Donna could have been in this episode a little less, but really, I mean, when you look back at the last, 15 episodes that we've talked about, this is just a dream. Like, we didn't have any Josie, we didn't have any James, Lucy and Andy, they're not bickering anymore, we don't have a whole lot of Nadine as a high schooler, all the stuff that we've hated over the last half of the season, it's not in this episode, and I really enjoyed it. I really like how the Miss Twin Peaks competition, it's been in the background of the subplots for a while now, and it could have potentially been, oh great, here's a useless subplot that's going to kill more time, but when we find out that Wyndham Earle is going to kidnap whoever the winner of the competition is, that lends some stakes to the competition. It could have just been a parody of competitions and beauty pageants and that sort of thing, like you said, but it's also, oh no, we know just about every character who has entered into this competition, so no matter who wins, we're going to be a little bit invested because we don't want any of these people to get kidnapped. If it's Shelley, we're going to be sad. If it's Audrey, we're going to be sad. If it's Annie, we're going to be sad, and it ends up being Annie. But, anyone who wins, we're going to be a little bit emotionally invested unless it's Donna. That's really, I like how they were able to make us care about the competition when up until now I really didn't. It was just kind of there, kind of like the Mill subplot from season 1.
You are right regarding the stuff, and I pretty much agree with everything you said. The stuff that I have issue with is all in the minutia, and I feel that enough of it builds up to where I do think there are some problems, especially with who is eventually decided to be Miss Twin Peaks.
Okay.
But you are right.
What's some of the other things you didn't like?
That's really it. To respond to your point about the whole Miss Twin Peaks as a subplot for, as you said, a while now, and it has been, I've just been mostly disinterested in it, and it's weird because it is like the Sawmill subplot from season 1, except this time around it's taking up less time in each episode.
Yeah, that's true.
It's taking up less time, and it is just people talking about it, but we do see more of it before it happens, and I think that was cool, and I like how it's a bit of an event, and I like how, like most events in the area, in local events, people don't really put it together to a week before it actually happens. I kind of like that. But whenever they bring it up in previous episodes, I would just kind of roll my eyes, and I got a little sick of it by the time we got to last episode. I don't think I've actually mentioned that in any of our discussions, and I think I should have.
I don't think I have either. Neither one of us have liked it, but we haven't really talked that much about it.
Yeah, I mean, and I won't say it was the worst part of the episode was when people are talking about the Miss Twin Peaks pageant. It was just one of those things where everyone seems to know what it is, except for me. Yeah. And everyone's just kind of talking about it very casually, and I'm thinking, okay, it's just a pageant. Why is everyone really talking about it? And I think I had actually mentioned a few episodes ago that it did feel a little desperate of oh my gosh, there's a lot of pretty girls in this show. You get to watch all the pretty girls on stage together in a pageant. Oh my god. But I like that when we finally do get to the Miss Twin Peaks pageant, it's more smart than I would have given it credit for. So I will give the episode that.
I think, if I may, the reason the Miss Twin Peaks competition is not as bad as the Sawmill plot was, early season 1 is when that got started. And at that time, we did not yet have a chance to really get to know these characters. This world and all of these characters was all still very new to us. And they were giving us this Sawmill subplot that took 6 episodes to finally come to a head. And we're just okay, let's get to the point while we're getting to know these characters. And, by the end of the Sawmill subplot, we had come to know these characters quite a bit. But when it first gets started, and it's taking 2, 3, 4, 5 episodes, and we're still just getting to know these characters in this world, it's a little much that we're having to deal with this very lengthy, drawn-out subplot that could have happened 2 or 3 episodes earlier than what it did. Whereas here, by the time this started, we were already very comfortable in the world of Twin Peaks, and even though there's been a lot of stuff over the last half of the season that we did not like, we've been, like I said, we've been comfortable, and we like a lot of these characters. Even when we don't necessarily like a lot of the subplots going on, we still like Andy and Lucy, even when they're a little irritating, and we still like Hawk. We love Ed. I like Norma. We love Dale Cooper. I like Harry, even though he's a little bit of a simple guy. You know, I like these characters, and we've come to love this town. We've come to love these characters, and so even though this subplot has been going on for a little while now, and they've been building up to it, and we haven't really cared, I think that's made it a little easier to swallow.
I agree. And seeing the whole town come together in the Roadhouse was a really nice, just a nice moment. And the whole event, if somebody was to argue with me and say that it went on for too long, I could understand where they're coming from. Because it is a lengthy, the whole Miss Twin Peaks pageant scene goes on for a while, but I was okay with it because it seemed like everyone involved with it, like from the actors to the director to the people who, decorated the sets, it seemed like everyone was having a great time.
Yeah.
So, and that by extension makes you as the viewer have a really good time. Did you ever see the Coen Brothers movie that came out earlier this year called Hail Caesar?
No.
Okay, that's a movie that got a pretty mixed response from audiences and critics alike. But I liked that movie. My brother loved it when we went to go watch it, and people like Steve Vaxley also loved that movie. And I'm actually surprised Steve of all people loved that movie. But that's a movie where the Coen Brothers are just having such a good time being in 1950s Hollywood. Well, I think earlier than that, it might have been 1930s Hollywood. But wait, hold on. When were the red hearings going on about like the House Un-American? Yeah, okay, then it was the 50s, my bad. I was going to say Golden Age of Hollywood, which is the 30s, but then I remembered the whole communist angle of that movie, but whatever. There's like several sequences that have nothing to do with the actual plot of that movie, where it'll just be like a 5-minute song and dance number of like actors doing their dance before Josh Brolin will come on in, and then he'll say, "Hey, Channing Tatum, I'm looking for this guy. Do you know where he is?" And then Channing Tatum will go, "Hold on one second, I got to go do my dance routine." Then, you have a 5-minute song and dance number. Then he comes back and he goes, "You know what? Well, I was just up there. I just remembered something. You might want to check this place out." And he goes, "Okay, thank you very much." And then he'll go over and then he'll go, try to see Scarlett Johansson, and then she'll be doing her, crazy acting shtick. And then she'll come down. He says, "Hey, I got to ask you a question." So it's a bit of like these weird vignettes of just the Coen brothers getting lost and having just a great time in this studio. And you're seeing all these different sets play out. And that's kind of what this reminded me of on a much smaller scale, where the Miss Twin Peaks pageant was, yes, we have Dale Cooper's like, okay, Wyndham Earle's going to kidnap whoever wins. And then we have that ticking clock happening, but you have that sense of, well, I mean, that's going to happen at the end of the pageant. So while we're here, we might as well just have fun. So I thought that was cool.
Yeah, it didn't bother me that it went on as long as it did. I didn't once move my mouse to see how much time I had left in the episode. You've been talking about a little bit how sometimes these episodes drag on. Sometimes you look and you're surprised at how fast it's gone by. I was having that. Never once did I think, man, I wish this pageant would hurry up. I thought because there was some stakes involved, because it's like, okay, whoever wins is going to get kidnapped. I was on the edge of my seat, and I feel like the episode knew that it was going to have people on the edge of its seat. So it's like, all right, we're going to string you along. Is it going to be Donna? Is it going to be Lucy? Is it going to be the Black Widow lady? And, I think we all knew it wasn't going to be the Black Widow lady, but, you're not sure who it's going to be. It could be any one of the three that Wyndham Earle has been threatening to kidnap for 5 episodes now. But I thought that it did a really good job of giving you the end of the pageant when it did.
I agree, yeah. And it was nice to see Audrey Horne give her speech for Dad. And then even though the whole Donna thing, which, by the way, we have to get to Donna eventually, but
yeah.
There's even a cool moment with Donna. I guess she's smoking backstage. They don't ever actually show her have a cigarette in her mouth or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, okay, so it's the part where she turns and she sees, it's right after Audrey gives her speech.
Yeah.
And so Ben Horne is saying, "Oh, you did such a good job. I'm so proud of you." And then it's right before Donna, approaches him. She lets out, she exhales.
Uh-huh.
And she lets out a big sigh. It's like smoke comes out of her mouth.
Yeah.
And but what made that kind of cool was you never saw a cigarette in her hand. I don't think, at least I didn't see any cigarette in her hand or in her mouth. So yeah. I thought it was actually kind of like a cool abstract way of capturing that pressure you feel before you're going to go do something that makes you nervous.
Yeah, and it's consistent because she's been smoking since early this season. She's been trying to act like the femme fatale, and that's kind of been going on in the background a little bit, so it's consistent with her character, even if we don't like her character. You mentioned that you didn't like a few minor things about this episode. I will say there was one thing I didn't like. I don't like the Black Widow lady. I don't feel like that really goes anywhere. It's been going on for quite a while now, and I remember when this subplot was first introduced, they introduced it along the same time that they introduced the Little Nicky subplot. And you were saying, way back then, you were saying that you suspected that Little Nicky, that subplot was going to be a supernatural thing, and the Black Widow lady was just going to be a normal lady. Well, it ended up being the other way around, where seemingly she's got some kind of supernatural powers over all men, and Little Nicky was just a normal dude. I wish there was some justice brought to this lady. We don't, spoilers for the last episode, but this lady, nothing ever happens to her. She's just here. She wants to participate in the Miss Twin Peaks pageant for some reason, and she doesn't win. She doesn't get arrested for killing the mayor. Nothing happens to her. I'm assuming that she did kill the mayor. That's kind of left up in the air. That subplot is left unresolved, and I'm disappointed in that. I wish that they could have resolved this a little while back. I don't really think that she had to be in the Miss Twin Peaks competition at all. What did you think about that?
I pretty much agree with everything you said. I don't think I ever voiced my thoughts on the Little Nicky subplot, but I remember back when Doc Hayward gave the whole 5-minute backstory of Little Nicky, and then you had mentioned in that episode that, and that's all we're ever going to get with the subplot, and I thought, there has to be some more to the subplot. We at least have to see him one more time. We at least have to have some kind of response to this. But no.
Yeah.
Doc Hayward just gives his Perry Mason explanation, and then that whole subplot's over, and then Dick and Andy are back to not liking each other. And that was very disappointing and underwhelming. The stuff with the Black Widow, though, I really agree with you. It's like, wait, did the mayor die at the end of this episode or something?
I get the mayor confused, and which one, the guy in this episode, is he the mayor or is he the editor of the newspaper?
Oh, I thought one was the mayor and one was just the mayor's brother. I thought the mayor's brother was the one who got killed earlier.
One of them was the mayor, and one of them was the editor-in-chief of the newspaper. And the one that she married first, she died, back towards the middle of the season. And then she got with this guy. And I don't remember if this guy is the editor-in-chief or if he's the mayor. I think he's the mayor, the one that we have now.
Yeah, I think he is too.
Okay. Then it was his brother, the editor of the newspaper, that died.
Yes. Okay. I thought that was the case. But yeah, you're right. She wants to win for some reason, still not clear, and
I mean,
nothing ever happens.
She has magic powers. She could do anything she wants. I mean, we get the introduction of Mr. Delwood, who works at the bank. She could have gone and married him and stolen all the money in the bank and then gone away a free woman, and no one would have been the wiser. I don't know why she wants this arbitrary, you're the Miss Twin Peaks. Why? I don't get it. And it's just a weird way to try and connect all of these subplots together, and it's probably the single thing about this episode that I like the least.
But to this subplot's credit, I liked her trying to woo Dick in the closet. I actually thought that was a pretty humorous, farcical scene.
Yeah.
Because in the end, it didn't amount to anything.
Exactly. I like that Dick is, whenever they're all clapping and the mayor, he's like, and whatever happened to you? Why didn't you vote for it? And he said, well, Annie gave a good speech. I thought that was really funny. We've been kind of down on Dick pretty much ever since he was introduced, and I thought that was a nice, a little bit of a redemption for his character, where he ends up, his virtue wins out over his sexuality. I thought that was a nice little touch to him. I
agree, and it's a nice little note to leave him on, because I don't think he's in the finale at all.
You're right. I don't think he is. I think that's the last we see of him, and that's right after we find out that Lucy has chosen Andy to be the father. Which, did you think it was weird that Dick didn't really care? Was that consistent, or because I mean he's been kind of fighting this ever since she said that she's going to leave them both hanging until the baby's born. So I thought it was weird that all of a sudden he's like, oh, okay, congratulations, you two, and then he runs off. Did you think that was strange, or was that okay?
It was strange.
Okay.
Because the whole reason Dick is here is because of Lucy's pregnancy.
Yeah. Yep.
The whole reason, we were even introduced to him, was because she wasn't sure if he was the dad or Andy was the dad.
Mm-hmm.
So having Dick just go, whatever, it was very inconsistent with his character. But I did think it was kind of funny, and then when Andy says, that's amazing, I'm so happy, but I gotta go tell Dale Cooper something really fast, then he leaves.
Yeah.
And then she just goes, man, that was a funny little quip.
That was good. So the other thing that I imagine both of us did not like was Donna. What do you have to say about Donna? Anything we haven't said before?
Oh, Donna. What's really funny about this, when I was watching this episode, my brother was getting ready to go see a movie, and like after the episode ended, we went to go see a movie. So I was watching this episode on my laptop with my headphones in, and anytime Donna said something, I just about bust my gut laughing because she's acting ridiculous. I want to get to the way this whole thing resolves next episode, but nobody actually says anything to her, and the whole thing is just her making assumptions
Yeah.
and then yelling at people for the assumptions that the thing that she's inferring from the way they're behaving. Then it makes it hilarious, where she says things like, "Stop treating me like a child." I mean, I had to pause the episode I was laughing too hard. I wasn't going to hear Doc Hayward's response. And she walks up and she goes, "Why were you seeing my mama?" And then he goes, "But now hold on. Donna, your mother and I..." "Don't say another word. Your father." And then she leaves. He didn't actually say anything. That's hilarious. That's comedic gold. Donna is such a non-entity. She's just there to cause drama and just scream and wail. Oh my lord.
So you're right. She makes assumptions. She assumes that Ben Horn is her father. But the thing is, I'm 99% sure that she's right. So that's what makes it even funnier. It would be one thing if she went around and said, like, Ben Horn is my father, but then it turns out that Ben Horn is, like, secretly trying to pay for Donna's mom to be rehabilitated and get, like, prosthetic legs or something like that because, 20 years ago he was responsible for her being in a wheelchair. Something like that. Like, it'd be something if she made this assumption and she was wrong, but it seems like the episode is supporting her assumption. Like, she's found enough evidence to go ahead and say that this is true, but then she's asking everyone anyway, like, "Hey, why were you guys hanging out with Ben Horn? Hey, Ben Horn, why are you hanging out with my mom?" And then she's just like, "Oh, you're my dad. I'm going to run away and cry." It's really weird the way it handles it, but, like, she did have enough proof. Like, I don't know why she was even asking them at this point. Like, she should have just said, "Okay, guys, I found my birth certificate. It doesn't have a name on it. What's going on?" Like, she should have said, "Here's the proof. Now I want you to tell me." And then if they don't, then she can go to Ben Horn, maybe.
And I think that's what the character thinks she's doing.
Yeah.
The thing, though, is, like, I'm just going to be repeating basically what you said. I don't understand why she's surprised. Like, I mean, I get why she's surprised. Like, "Oh my God, I think Ben Horn's my dad," but she doesn't even make any assumptions. Like, it's like she has all the pieces and doesn't put them together, and then says, "Hold on, I don't get this. Why doesn't my birth certificate have a father's name on it? How come I'm seeing you in pictures?" It's like she's putting it together as she's saying it.
Yeah.
When it's been like, what, a day or two? It's been a couple of days. She should have been putting this together a while ago, and she should have been said, the thing she should have said is, "Hey, Dad, doctor, is Ben Horn my dad?" Or she should say, "Hey, Mom, is Ben Horn my dad?" And she should have gone over to Ben Horn and said, "Hey, are you my dad?" Like, those are the things she shouldn't have been like, "What's going on?" Well, gee, Donna, put the pieces together and figure it out yourself. Why are you simply asking them to put the pieces together for you? Instead, why don't you just ask them for confirmation? That would have made it more. This would be suspenseful if I was like a 5-year-old and couldn't put the pieces together myself.
Yeah. Yep. That's true. I'm so glad that she's not going to be in the revival. Like, you have no idea how happy I am that she's not going to be bringing her nonsense into the year 2017. Like, I was just. I feel like this is another one of those things, and I sound like a broken record because this show keeps doing the same stuff, but, like, they had a purpose for Donna in season 1. She was the best friend of the girl who died, but then it was like that's all they had for her, and they didn't have anything else for her to do, and then they kept trying to find stuff for her to do, and it just did not work. And I think this is more evidence of that. Like, what if, in typical soap opera fashion, we revealed that Ben Horn is secretly sleeping with Donna Hayward's mom, or was, 20-something years ago, and Donna and Audrey are secretly half-sisters. Like, that's something that you would expect on As the World Turns, or whatever. But it's just so badly handled the way Donna does her detective work. Like, she is the worst investigator in this entire series, and we've known that for a very long time. And we have to spend like 3 episodes of her going through all this sleuthing, and it just amounts to this. It falls flat.
It does, and we ultimately get the resolution of this whole subplot next episode, but...
Even then, it's kind of just a little 2-minute scene, and by that point, we've got things that we're much more interested in that we'd rather see on the screen.
Yeah, correct. And I think it's interesting that Lara Flynn Boyle's not going to be in the revival, and largely because Lara Flynn Boyle swore she'd never be in another David Lynch anything.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Did she have a bad experience with David Lynch?
Back when like season 2 was airing, and I can never find any concrete evidence or like any single thing that happened. Like I'm still unclear. Like me and you have theorized, and I've read a lot of other theories saying that like David Lynch was kind of given the boot, and he had a pretty bad working experience with ABC at the first 3/4 of season 2. But I've also read some other places that like, yeah, we got the resolution to the mystery 9 episodes in season 2, but Lynch and company gave us like 11 more episodes to finish off the season. Like I heard people say that as if he was like kind of the creative force behind all of season 1 and 2. But at the same time, there was also, this is where I'm pulling this from, there was another story I had read where I guess I'm just going to go with that Lynch and Frost were given the boot mid-season 2, and then it was kind of given to Harley Peyton and Robert Engels. That's my assumption as to what really happened. And everyone else in the writers' room was just trying to scramble to find something to do. And I had read somewhere that Kyle MacLachlan felt abandoned by his director, which was David Lynch.
Yeah.
And so him and David had like a lot of making up to do over the years, and that Lynch and Frost had differences that they just couldn't reconcile. And so there was a big wedge divided between them. And then a lot of the show's actors, most notably Sherilyn Fenn, Cheryl Lee, and Kimmy Robertson, of all people, the girl who plays Lucy, they were all very much in support of David Lynch and his vision. And most of the actors were, like Michael Ontkean, but a couple of them just felt, like, as I said, Kyle MacLachlan felt abandoned. But then Lara Flynn Boyle said she swore she would never be in another David Lynch thing because she just did not like the experience of working on season 2, I guess.
Huh. Now, I do another quick question. This doesn't have anything to do with Twin Peaks, but we know that Kyle MacLachlan, he was in Dune, which was a David Lynch thing. He was in Blue Velvet, and he was in Twin Peaks. Was he in anything else David Lynch after this?
He was not, actually.
Okay, well, he was briefly in Fire Walk with Me. Okay. Well, that's interesting. I wonder if he and David Lynch ever made up.
They did. There's actually I saw this interview it wasn't even really an interview. It was like a roundtable discussion of David Lynch, Kyle MacLachlan, Mad Chinamick, and some other guy. I guess he was like a sound guy on Twin Peaks. And it was just them talking about working on the project and how they got to the project and all that other stuff. And that was a couple years back, and they all looked to be happy together.
Okay. Well, that's good. I always like to see people make up and kiss and all that.
And I guess Frost and Lynch did reconcile because they're writing 18 episodes of the revival.
Yeah, and that's really good, both because, they're friends again, and also I feel like these two work well together.
I do too. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about regarding this episode?
Not this episode. This one was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. I feel like it hits most of the right notes. There's just a few places where it falters a little bit, but overall, this is an improvement over some of the episodes we have been suffering from recently.
All right, because I did have a couple more notes to talk about this.
Okay.
When it comes to who ultimately wins the Miss Twin Peaks pageant, the thing is like where people are talking about the Black Widow lady trying to get herself to win because she's sleeping with the mayor and she seduces Dick Tremaine, and people, and I was a little curious as to how anybody would actually allow that because it seemed a little conflict of interesty.
Yeah.
So you could tell everyone else associated with this pageant was thinking of that, where everyone kind of like rolling their eyes, like, of course you're going to try to get her to win. But then we have Norma, and she's like, I want to see one of you girls win it for the double R. And then you find out that she was the original winner of the pageant 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And so that's also a conflict of interest, though. So how is it any better than the Black Widow lady?
Well, what's weird is a few episodes ago, wasn't Pete one of the judges?
Yeah, they said Pete, Doc Hayward, and the mayor were. And then I think the mayor had said, I think this was a couple episodes ago, he had turned to the Black Widow lady and said, I got the judges switched up, so it's now going to be Norma, Dick, and me. And he says, I think we'll swing the competition in your favor.
Okay, I do remember him saying that about Dick. I just must have missed it about Norma suddenly becoming one of the judges. You're right. It feels like any of the judges should not have a relative who is in the competition. So that means that the mayor and Norma, and for that matter Dick, since he's allegedly he's got a vested interest in Lucy, or one could make that argument. either all of them need to be off the judges' table, or Lucy, the Black Widow, and Annie, and possibly Shelley, all of them need to be out of the contest because they've got loved ones who are on the judges' table. That is true. You've got a good point. That's something I didn't really think about. Well, I didn't think about it with these characters. For some reason, I was thinking that it was a conflict of interest for Audrey to be in a competition, but actually she's one of the ones who is being pretty honest about it, because her dad, although he's kind of involved, he's not one of the judges, so it works for her.
And is she even really in the competition, though?
Probably not, because it was just in this episode that her dad actually convinced her to go and make the speech. And so she would not have had time to have gone and practiced the dancing and all that and the talent show. And we don't see her doing the dancing or a special talent. We just see her give a speech. So you're right. She's probably not in the competition itself. I didn't think about that, but you're right.
Because that's one of those things. I thought she was just there to give a speech. I'm trying to think of other things. By the way, this has one of the best. We said last episode that it has by far the best kidnapping scene with Windom Earle. This episode, too, has a magnificent kidnapping scene. The big ending with the strobes going off and then Windom dressed up. The whole thing with like where Bobby looks over and sees the log lady,
that
looks
was
back
amazing.
And
that was so funny.
It tricked me out. Like, that tricked me out. I was so surprised by that, and that was really cool. The way it was staged, the way the camera swung back and forth, the way that one character's like, where did she go?
Yeah.
I like that. I really like that. And the whole stuff with Windom, like, dressed up as the log lady, he looks surprisingly like Catherine E. Coulson, which is pretty funny. And then, you know, the strobes are going off, and then, like, pandemonium's going everywhere. This is much better than that stupid ferret getting out. And then the bag hits Nadine on the head. Like, it's pandemonium. There's strobes. It's insane. And then ultimately, they can't find Annie. And it was a really nice cliffhanger.
Yeah. This scene reminded me in The Office when Dwight is dressed up like, what's her face, Pam. And then Jim, he says, hey, Pam. And then, like, Pam comes across the office and he sees her and he turns around and it's Dwight. So, like, when I was watching this, I was imagining Windom Earle saying, you never know when you have to have a passing resemblance to somebody. But Bobby, what I love so much about this is Bobby kind of acts like an idiot, and sometimes this series plays him like an idiot. Like when he was working for Ben Horne, and Ben Horne was doing the Civil War thing, Bobby was not at his best. He was kind of an idiot during that whole subplot. But there have been times where Bobby is very shrewdish and very clever. If you'll remember in season 1 when Cooper and Harry were questioning Bobby and they showed him the video and Laura is looking at the camera and Cooper and Bobby both notice a motorcycle in the reflection of her eye, Bobby noticed that, and then he was able to keep his cool and he didn't mention anything, and then he tells Mike, hey, we're looking for a biker. Like, Bobby's kind of smart when he wants to be, and so he's watching all the people and he sees the log lady, and then he turns around and he sees Windom dressed as the log lady, and he kind of has a puzzled look on his face, and he turns back around and sees that she's gone. And at first you're thinking he's going to be like, oh, okay, I must have just imagined it. But then he goes up to Windom and says, did you bring your whole family here or something? Like this is the log lady's brother that no one's ever heard of? And then, like, Windom hits him hard with that log. Like, he just rears back and hits him. And I was like, man, like, do we see Bobby after this? Was he at the scene with him and Shelley at the Double R, was that before or after this?
Well, that would have to have been before.
Okay. I just couldn't remember if we saw Bobby after he got hit in the head with the log.
No, we don't see him.
Oh, okay. All right. Or I didn't know if that was in the next episode. It might have been in the next episode. Anyway, but yeah, I do love that scene. I love Windom's disguise. It's not as good as the horse. I think the horse, it would have been impossible to have topped the horse. But it's really funny. It's unexpected because we've seen him do a whole bunch of disguises. This is the first time we've seen him do a character in the show. That was brilliant. I love Bobby's reaction to it. It was all very well played.
And not to mention, Annie is also Norma's sister. I just remembered that.
Yeah.
It wasn't that she just worked at the Double R and was already, like, wanting somebody at the Double R to win it. It's like, that's her sister, too. Also, like, Annie being involved in it, like, and I like what the mayor says, like, you've only been in Twin Peaks for 15 minutes. Why are you the winner? I kind of get where he's coming from.
Yeah.
Why couldn't, I don't know, why couldn't Shelley win it? She needs something, right?
Yeah. And, I really love Dale Cooper. Like, he's clapping, but he's clearly not happy. Like, he's like, oh, no, Annie's going to get kidnapped. Like, he knows right then. It's like, this is going to happen. It's not that Windom is maybe going to kidnap her. He knows as soon as she's announced that Windom is going to succeed somehow. So I really love that, like, he's clapping, but he's very clearly conflicted on it. I thought that was very well played. Very good acting from McLaughlin.
Yeah. And I know like you don't really have much more to say about this episode, but there's a bunch of little things that I like in this episode. And this is like a really cool episode of like little moments strung together. The stuff with where Wyndham Earl enters his shack and sees that Major Briggs has been set free. I don't know what's up with his face. It's like pale for some reason. And then it's like his teeth are all black. And then he holds up a bag, and then we find out that bag has a bunch of like deadly spiders in it, and then Leo has string in his mouth, which is comedically long string that's attached to the box of spiders dangled over his head. Like it's crazy.
Yeah. I assumed that the pale face was like part of one of his disguises, but I don't know what disguise that could have been for.
I don't know either, because it's more pale than the log lady, and I'm trying to remember if we saw him last episode. No, we did see him last episode. He kidnapped Major Briggs in a horse costume.
Yeah, I don't know what the pale face. You're right. He did look really weird, almost like a zombie or something. But I don't know why. That was a little strange. You're right.
No, I mean, I like it. It's weird and it's creepy, but it's never brought up ever again. And it's just creepy, but I liked it. I should also probably say that I have a God bless you, Hawk moment of the week. God bless you, Hawk. Without you, no one would have found Major Briggs. And if nobody found Major Briggs, then the entire tracking of Wyndham Earl and the Black Lodge would be completely moot. It is an incredible piece of police work, and your work is noted here. God bless you, Hawk.
And that might be our last God bless you, Hawk moment for a while, because he's not in the last episode, is he?
No.
Let's have a quick moment of silence for the God Bless You Hawks of this series. We've had many. The best one is when he threw the knife. This is a good one. This is up there.
Yes, it is.
Did you have anything else about this episode before we moved on to the next one?
I'm sure I do, but I did like Leo letting Major Briggs free.
Yeah.
I thought that was a good, like, there's actually a character arc here. And I remember a while back, I remember being frustrated that nothing was happening with Leo. He was just here to be abused by Wyndham Earl. But I think him being abused has kind of opened his eyes to what he's been doing to like Shelley and other people in his life, and him like letting Major Briggs go so he can go and protect his wife. I thought that was a genuinely touching moment, and the way Eric DeRay performs that, I was very fond of, and I thought it was a great way to wrap up his character arc.
Yeah, he's probably been holding that rope in his mouth for 25 years. I hope that's exactly where we pick up with him in the revival. If he is he in the revival? Please say yes.
He's not.
Oh no, he probably died of spider bites. That's a shame.
Yeah, it's really sad.
I liked that he seems to be showing love for Shelley at this point. I thought that was good. I do wish that we could have built up to it a little bit more, but I did like his ending. Yeah.
I think that's all I have to say about the episode Miss Twin Peaks.
Alrighty. Well,
I got a question.
Okay.
You're the judge. Who do you vote for Miss Twin Peaks?
Oh my. Probably. Oh my. Well, that depends. Am I one of the judges that the Black Widow has wrapped around her finger, or am I Norma?
Ooh, you are a unisex. You don't work at the Double R. You've been in Twin Peaks a while, so you've seen the pageant, I guess. This is a lot more caveats and thinking than I would have put in. Let's see. As an objective viewer of Twin Peaks, the television show, who would you vote as Miss Twin Peaks?
I guess I would vote for Annie, just because I can't think of who I would vote over Annie. I know you haven't really liked Heather Graham's performances in the show, but when you look at all of her competitors, like, I like Shelley, but we don't really get to see her do anything in the competition. And, Lucy is funny, but we don't really get to see her do anything in the competition. Like,
no, she does the splits. That was awesome.
Well, yeah, but, compared to, like, as Dick Tremaine said, a moving speech, like, some of them, they have talents that they do, but they don't really have, like, a, this is why we should save the planet kind of thing. Like, I feel like hers had more of a call to arms, while all the others, it's like exotic contortionist dancing or something like that. So I guess I would vote for Annie, but it would probably have been more of a tough choice if we got to see some of the others give speeches, maybe.
Okay.
What about you?
Well, I wouldn't actually do Annie because she's only been here for 15 minutes. What you got to do? I would go Audrey. She's technically not even in the competition, but her speech is awesome.
Yeah, that's why.
And she's got that too cool for school vibe. It was kind of, I like it.
Yeah. I think that's all we have about this episode. So moving on to the next episode, what was this one called again?
This episode is titled Beyond Life and Death.
Alrighty. So in this episode, Pete storms into the police building and says that the log lady, actually Wyndham Earle, stole his truck. Log lady comes in and she brings some scorched engine oil, which her husband left her, which she says will open a gateway. Ronette Pulaski is brought in and she recognizes it as the same smell as Bob from the night that Laura Palmer was killed. Wyndham Earle takes Annie into the Red Room. Nadine regains her old memories from when the sandbag hit her on the head. Doc Hayward hulks out and attacks Ben Horn when Ben has ruined the Hayward household forever with his truthing. Andrew switches the key that Thomas Eckhart left Catherine in the previous episode. He switches it with one of his own keys, which we now know is a safety deposit box key, and Pete sees him do it. Cooper goes into the Red Room. Audrey handcuffs herself to the bank vault to protest the Ghostwood project. Andrew and Pete come to the bank to get into the safety deposit box. It's a bomb, and it blows up as soon as it's opened with a note that says, "I got you, Andrew," signed by Thomas Eckhart. At the R&R, Dr. Jacoby brings Sarah Palmer to meet Major Briggs. She tells him in a nightmare voice, "I am the Black Lodge with Dale Cooper." Dale and the little person from another place, they talk a little bit, but it's mostly nonsense and repeats of stuff that they talked about in Season 1. The bellhop shows up, Connor's favorite character, and he transforms into the Giant. So I was right. They are the same character. I did not know that. I had completely forgotten that, but based on clues in the season, I am proud of myself here. The bellhop is the Giant. Wyndham Earle, or a demon disguised as Wyndham, offers to let Annie live if Dale gives up his soul. Dale accepts. Then we see Bob is either controlling Wyndham or has overridden Wyndham's evil scheme with his own. Bob says that Wyndham cannot take Dale's soul, but Bob will take Wyndham's soul. We then see Dale's evil cackling doppelganger. He's laughing with Bob. And then the doppelganger chases Dale around a little bit. Leland's doppelganger says that he didn't kill anybody. Cooper and Annie both make it out of the Red Room, Annie with only scratches on her face. Cooper wakes up in his room with Doc Hayward and Harry. He says that he has to brush his teeth. In the bathroom, he slams his head into the mirror, and we see that his reflection is Bob. He continues to ask, "How's Annie?" and maniacally laughs. And that is the last thing that we ever see in Twin Peaks until the movie that came out a year later. Connor, what did you think of this episode?
My anticipation for this episode was kind of out of the roof. I was very excited. When I really got into this show, and when I get into the show, I really get into it. And I'll find myself looking around the internet for, like, what are the best episodes of Twin Peaks and all that sort of stuff. So this always shows up on, like, the best ofs. I always, like, saw images from this, like, the whole, like, 20-minute sequence in the Red Room at the end of this episode.
Yeah.
That being said, I was pretty disappointed.
What?
I know. However, it's not a bad episode.
Okay.
When this thing started off and I saw Ray Wise's credit and I saw Grace Zabrisky's credit and I saw David Lynch's directing credit and I saw how Mark Frost and everyone else was writing this episode, the first 30 minutes of this just kind of highlighted how much of a missed opportunity Season 2 was for me. And there's a couple of, like, we wrap up a couple of subplots, pretty hurried, largely unsatisfying ways, not entirely unsatisfying ways. And then there are yeah, and then there's even a couple of subplots that just don't get any resolution, like the stuff with Leo. So
or Donna and Ben Horn, like the last we
that's the thing where I say it's largely unsatisfying.
Oh, okay.
We'll get to that, but the stuff in the Red Room is the stuff nightmares are made of.
Oh yeah.
It is an event when you show up and you're being crooned as you enter the Red Room. That whole sequence with the guy singing, it was like something out of a dream and realized on camera. The whole sequence of entering room from room from room from room, and then, but there's so much, like, it risks being weird. No, it's not. It is weird, and it risks being nonsensical. But darn it, in my heart of hearts, in the dreamlike atmosphere, because I've had so many dreams in my lifetime, and I've always tried to get to the bottom of what my dreams mean, to me anyways. So if you just look at the stuff that happens in the dream, then it's actually, like, not the dream, but in the Red Room, it's pretty straightforward, I would say. It's pretty weird, but it is largely straightforward. But there are implications and almost prophetic implications in the dialogue in the Red Room that it was incredible. And when we get to that final scene, it's heartbreaking. I knew the ending of that. It was spoiled for me years ago.
Yeah.
But it was nonetheless heartbreaking when we get to that final scene. And I guess ultimately I didn't want this to happen, but it did happen, where I got too excited for it.
Yeah.
and I expected this to give me more closure than it did, because this was made with the intention of more episodes to come.
Uh-huh.
And I am so beyond happy we are getting more episodes. The one wish I have, and I'm even glad we're getting a prequel movie that came out a year after this, and we're going to be reviewing that next week. I really hope the Showtime revival is the finale of Twin Peaks. I hope this is the end of it. I will say I like this as a finale. I like this as an episode. As a finale, I was a little underwhelmed, but the last 20 minutes were excellent. What did you think, Comics Kid?
Well, I can understand where you're coming from now, because far too often I will let the hype that other people place on something, I will let that affect my enjoyment of a movie or a TV series. So I can very easily understand that. I knew the ending going into it the first time I watched it, but I didn't know about the hype very much. I knew that Cooper came out of the Red Room and he was possessed by Bob, but I didn't really know that everyone on the planet was talking about it like it was the greatest TV episode of all time. So if that had happened with me, I can very easily see myself not enjoying it as much. But this is probably my favorite episode of Twin Peaks.
Wow! All right.
I love the Red Room. It's so weird. It's scary. Every time Laura Palmer or her doppelganger is on screen and she's doing that vampire scream with her mouth wide open, I'm like rushing to turn the volume down. I'm like, stop it, stop it. It's eerie. It makes you uncomfortable, and I love it so much. Like, normally, if something is awkward and weird, I don't want more of it. But this, I was just eating it up with a spoon. Like, it's nonsensical. It's weird. I can't decipher hardly any of it, but I love it so much. And I think part of that is because we've hardly had any stuff from the mystical side of things in this season. Season 1, there was a lot more of that, where we had the little man, we had Bob, we had the Red Room, we had the boy who made the cream corn disappear in Season 2. We've had stuff like that, but it seems like for the last half of this season, we haven't had any of that. And so I was really glad that we got all of that crashing in. We got the giant, we got the little man, we got Laura again, we got to see some other characters and their doppelgangers in the Red Room. It was so incredible. I don't have hardly any other words for it. I really loved it. I agree with you. As a finale, it is very frustrating because we have this, and then there's Fire Walk with Me, which, spoilers, it is a prequel. It does not tell us what happens to Cooper after we find out that he's possessed by Bob. And then we're going to have a sequel set 25 years later. So I have no idea. Has Leo been, was he killed? What happened to Audrey? She was in the bank when it exploded. There's so many questions that we have that we want to see the answers to, and we will probably never get those answers. We know that Audrey is going to be in the revival, so we're probably going to have an answer to that. But there's a lot of stuff that this leaves open, and then I'm disappointed that we didn't get more, but at the same time, I look at the Season 2 that we got, and I'm kind of relieved that we didn't get to see this show sink further into awful. So, I'm of mixed minds. At the end of the day, I'm a little sad that this is the last of Twin Peaks that we got until next year. And I'm almost not counting Fire Walk with Me, since that is a prequel. And I still feel like, and we'll talk more about this next week when we talk about it, but I still feel like Fire Walk with Me, it kind of goes in a different direction than what this series intended. But there's a lot about this episode that I really love, and I don't really know if I have much more to say other than I just like it.
All right. This episode is directed by David Lynch, and I can definitely tell. Yeah. I think David Lynch is, one of the great film directors of our time. I don't think that's a very divisive opinion to have, or it's not a very controversial opinion to have. But there are things about him that just don't really work for me. And I can totally get where he's coming from as a director. As somebody who has made and participated in the making of short films and writing scripts and everything, I can definitely see, I can totally see where he's coming from. I can practically hearing him laughing his head off during that unbelievably long take of a guy walking back and forth from his desk to a bank vault and back and forth and back and forth. I can basically hear him cackling with glee because that's his sense of humor. That's just not my sense of humor. The very long, drawn out, almost Shaggy Dog nature of his comedic scenes. And David Lynch is one of those people that he's weird and he has weird and obscure things that happen in his movies, but he is not a very pretentious person. Any chance he can get to integrate humor into his movies, he will take that chance. He loves humor. He loves making himself laugh, and he really likes making other people laugh. I can tell that just from even stuff like Blue Velvet, which is super dark and twisted. it's a satire on the American lifestyle, the suburban American lifestyle. There's so many jokes. And I mean, even Roger Ebert thought it was juvenile jokes inserted into that movie. But you get that stuff here, and I'm glad he has that stuff. And I really appreciate him, and I respect him as an artist. But just for my own personal feelings, it's just not really my sense of humor. And if I didn't really know that about Lynch as an artist, I would have just assumed that they were padding for time.
Okay. Yeah. I can see that. Were there any things in this episode that you didn't like other than, but you don't necessarily think that they were padding for time. You just, if you're saying if you weren't more familiar with Lynch's style, you would think that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Donna still sucks.
Yeah. So that scene where I guess she's acting like she's gonna leave the house, and Ben is there, the mom is there, and then they're all like, no, don't leave. And then Father Hayward comes home, and he says, Ben, get out of my house. And then he, like, lunges at Ben. He throws his head into the fireplace. Like, Ben Horne could be dead. Like, you know, we don't know what happens. And then at the end of the episode, Doc Hayward is nursing Cooper back to health like nothing happened. Like, that's what I was talking about when you were saying there's some subplots that don't really get any resolution. That's one of them. Like, Donna, at the end, she hugs her dad, and she says, you're my daddy. And, okay, that's a sweet moment, I guess, because, you know, she's saying, even though you're not my biological dad, you raised me. But that would have more emotional heft to it if Donna had been going through a character arc where she was trying to decide if she should accept Ben Horne as her new father figure or something like that. But she didn't have that. She just found out that Ben Horne was her dad in the previous episode, and now she's immediately saying, no, I don't accept that. So it doesn't really have the heft that I think this episode thinks that it does.
Yeah, there's a lot of head wounds in this episode.
Yeah?
There's a lot of head wounds. And I almost and I can laugh at that, but I also kind of want to go back and watch this episode and maybe watch in context. Maybe I'll gain a greater appreciation for it. But see if that's a motif that has intended implications, from Lynch's point of view. Because at the end, Cooper smashes his head into the mirror and blood runs down his face. Ben Horne gets smashed into the fireplace, and he has like pieces of tile in his forehead and blood running down his face. Nora, Nadine and Mike have bandages from their injuries last episode, and what's her face? Annie only has scratches on her face. Like, there's a lot of head wounds in this episode.
Yeah, and it could be that has some thematic meaning, and I've said before, I'm not good at deciphering themes, so if there is something there, I would have no idea what it would be.
Yeah, and I really want to go back and look at that. I think I've deciphered The Red Room.
Okay.
And of course, I only watched it one time, but I think I have a firm enough grasp that I can get from one viewing. But other stuff that's in this episode. But okay, can I talk about Donna for just one last little thing?
Yeah.
She's like, so she's all, oh my gosh, nah, you guys suck. I'm gonna leave. I'm going away. I'm gonna go see James over in like Illinois or wherever he is right now. And then Ben says, now Donna, just listen. And she says, I'm tired of talking. What are you talking about, Donna? Nobody has told you anything. How can you be sick of talking if nobody's talked to you about this?
Yeah.
It's hilarious. Like the whole time, the last 3 episodes, anytime she brings it up and she's met with a wall of silence, and now she's had enough, and she says, I'm done talking. What talking are you talking about?
Yeah, I don't know. I think we've spent more time thinking about Donna than the writers have at this point.
Yeah, I guess so. And there's a couple of things I'm a little curious about where this episode leaves certain things regarding that whole subplot. Like, namely, whatever happened to Ben Horne. I mean, I guess he might have died. Okay. Well, if I was putting together headcanon and I didn't know there was a revival that had Richard Beymer in it next year, then I would have just assumed that he died.
Yeah, and because he is in a revival, I'm just going to assume that he did survive. But yeah, that's one of those things where, like, what happened to him, And again, it's disappointing that this is the last episode that we get, but at the same time, I am glad that we didn't get to see the series sink further into, like, really nasty, stupid, like, why in the world is Donna still here kind of stuff. Like, I am glad that we didn't get to see it go any further than that.
I am too. Wouldn't it be hilarious if like we had a flashback at the start of the we had a flashback to this last episode at the beginning of next season, and it turns out Donna's like, oh no, there's a guy with a head wound on my carpet, and she runs over and trips over the body and then smashes her head against the same fireplace, but she dies. And then Richard Beymer wakes up, he's like, oh, what happened? And you know what, to this subplot's credit, I love the humorous the humorous idea of Ben Horn apologizing for being good. Yeah. He's like, I'm sorry for the goodness. I'm just really sorry about it. And then it comes back to bite him. That was funny.
Yeah. So what were some other subplots that you wanted to talk about?
Well, I'm trying to recall the Lucy and Andy subplot.
Basically Andy is comforting Lucy at the beginning of the episode, and then he says, I gotta go talk to Harry and Cooper. And that was all that we see of them in this episode.
Okay.
We didn't really...
Well, I guess the finale of it. Yeah, don't they like the episode open with them like leaning their heads in together and talking
that's
about
at the very beginning of the episode. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm glad they're in love and they're together. That's a good enough ending, I suppose.
I kind of want in the revival for their kid. I kind of want the kid to officially be Dick Tremaine's, but like as far as like the father figure, I want it to be Andy. But I do think it'd be hilarious if it was biologically Dick's. I think that'd be humorous, but that I wouldn't have to have any more Dick Tremaine in the revival. Do you want to talk about Audrey chaining herself up in the bank?
Yeah, let's go there.
Okay, so it's stupid because like 5 episodes ago, Audrey was in the library for some stupid reason, and Wyndham Earle approached her pretending to be a college professor, and he has her read him a poem, and she said something like, I'm researching into civil disobedience. And then he said, oh, good girl, good girl. And then he leaves, and then we don't hear anything else about civil disobedience until now. Suddenly, it's like, okay, I'm going to chain myself to this bank in protest of the Ghostwood thing. We already said that it was stupid, that Audrey went from hating her father and fighting against her father at every turn to suddenly she's part of the business and she's basically running things, and she and her father are really chummy. We already said that was really dumb how the series went that far that quickly. It's really stupid that now suddenly she's chaining herself up to a bank to protest the bank's involvement in the Ghostwood thing, I guess. We've never seen anyone at the bank. We've never seen the bank before. This episode is kind of acting like this guy who works at the bank is like a character, because Audrey comes in and he's like, oh, Miss Horn. And then when Andrew comes in, he's like, oh, you're supposed to be dead. And it's like, are we supposed to know who this guy is? Because he knows everybody in Twin Peaks. And like, it's almost acting like you said, it is acting like if we were going to get a season 3, and this guy probably would have been a major character if he didn't get blown up. And we do see his glasses fly outside, so I'm guessing he got blown up. But, it's really kind of weird that they just all of a sudden it's like, okay, let's have Audrey chain herself up in the bank so that we can involve her in this soap opera cliffhanger ending of the bank getting blown up. I just thought it was really dumb how it got to that point.
Yeah, like I said, this whole sequence is supposed to be like farcical. Farce just isn't really my style of humor. Yeah. And David and Lynchian farce is really not my sense of humor. And I talked about that earlier. And I talked about this like in the very first episode of this season where like David Lynch loves things being really slow. Uh-huh. Like this on a pacing and blocking level reminded me of the Giant and Bellhop from the clear top of the season.
Uh-huh. And you didn't like those at all.
I didn't like that at all. I kind of got it. I thought this was a better venue for that sort of style here. Because it's David Lynch stringing you along. He knows he's stringing you along, and he's having a blast stringing you along. Okay, I get it. Cool. But so she shows up, and she's like, I'm going to chain myself because this is me sending a message. And we kind of talked about that a little bit earlier, and I actually thought it's a kind of a nice little setup and payoff where she learns civil disobedience. 4 episodes later, she's told to go send a message, and the next episode she's combined civil disobedience with sending a message. Okay, fine. We have Thomas, Eckhart, and Pete show up. All right, cool. And it all just leads up to a bomb. Like, that's it. That was the best they could get. Like, that reeks of we know we're getting canceled. Like, we really know we're getting canceled. So, Audrey, Pete, Thomas, they're all in a bomb blast. Boom. Okay, they're all dead. Whatever. Don't think about it.
Yeah. I think that also I think I like this whole sense of humor better than you do. Like the old man walking down the bank and getting a drink of water and then bringing it back to Audrey, and then she's like looks at him like, I can't hold the glass, I'm handcuffed. Can you pour the water down my throat? Like all that I thought was really funny. And then Andrew Packard comes in, and the old man was acting like, well, I'd love to let you into the safety deposit boxes, but we've got a girl chained up here. And then Andrew Packard says, I don't see a problem here. And then it's just like they just push the door open and she's still chained to it. Like I thought that was really funny. But then just the fact that her character just all of a sudden it's like I'm doing civil disobedience now. Like you're right, they set it up 5 episodes ago, but that setup was way too far off ago, and she wasn't building to this moment. She was reading a book 4 or 5 episodes ago, and then suddenly she's chaining herself to a thing. That's really what I didn't like. The sense of humor didn't bother me. I thought it was kind of funny. I can see why people wouldn't find it funny, and I definitely can see how you wouldn't because you didn't like the giant and the bellhop, and this is very similar to that. I wouldn't say it's as bad because the season 2 premiere was like an hour and a half long, and this is not nearly as drawn out because it's a 45-minute episode. But it is similar, so I can see why you wouldn't like it. But I think for me it was more just that the character stuff was inconsistent rather than the sense of humor itself.
Yeah, I don't like. I thought I had more to say about this scene, and I totally get where you're coming from. If this is like more your style of humor, then fine, more power to you. I can see how this would be appealing. I found this one more amusing than the stuff with the giant.
Yeah.
Because the stuff with the giant was like, oh my god, Cooper just got shot, what's going to happen? And it was like this stupid, like, stretched out joke.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I just felt like it was just a misfire. Like, I got what they were trying to do, I just didn't think it was the right tone to go with for a character who just got shot and is going to be getting clues to a mystery that has supernatural implications. Like, I just didn't like it. This time it was like comedic from the get-go of like civil disobedience. I'm chaining myself to the bank vault, and then people can still get into the vault. That was funny.
Yeah. It kind of reminded me.
Right.
I know you don't watch Parks and Recreation. There was an episode where Leslie Knope chains herself to a fence because a construction company was going to be destroying a national landmark that she didn't want to be destroyed. But then it turns out that the fence can open up anyway, and they go and destroy it while she's chained to the fence. Like it kind of reminded me of that, and I thought that was funny.
Yeah. But you are right. Like maybe because it's weird. I consider myself like well adjusted to slower paced movies. Like I love 60s cinema. Like, and that's like a decade in particular where people will point to slow pacing. You talk about Dr. No, people go, oh yeah, it's a 60s movie. It's not really a Bond movie. You see the pacing slow, yada, yada, yada. I love Dr. No. Mm-hmm. I think the Guns of Navarone is awesome. I really like To Kill a Mockingbird. Like, I really like 60s cinema, and like I think that I'm well adjusted to slow pacing. 2001: A Space Odyssey is one of my favorite movies. That movie's really slow. But I guess I like faster-paced comedy then. I guess that must be where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I can see that. I like to think that this bank hardly ever gets any business, and suddenly, in the span of 5 minutes, they get 3 customers, and then the bank gets blown up. Like, I like to think before this, like, most of their days are spent with these two just hanging out their desk, like, waiting for closing time. That's just my headcanon.
That's funny.
The problem with this episode, as far as discussing it, is that it's really difficult to discuss the Red Room. Like, there's a whole lot of weird stuff, and there's nothing much for me to say other than, hey, isn't that weird? Like, you know, we get to see, was her name, not Catherine, but Wyndham Earle's wife, whatever her name is. We get to see her in the Red Room, and, like, all of that is really strange, but, like, I don't know how much I have to say about it, other than, hey, that's pretty weird.
Well, I get that. I got a lot to say about it.
Oh, okay. Well, then I may just sit here and listen.
I love this a lot. The one thing I would like, and when I talk about this, there's almost like prophetic ramifications to this. Laura Palmer says, I'll see you again in 25 years. Meanwhile, and then she just freezes and disappears.
Yeah.
And then you see her later in the Red Room, and she says, meanwhile, but her eyes are all like glossy, like gray. And so all the people in the Red Room that we see have like gray eyes, and those are like the doppelgangers, because one person just says, I think actually the man from another place says, doppelganger.
Yeah.
And then they all have just those glazed over gray eyes. And then the next time we see Laura Palmer say meanwhile when she reappears, she has those gray eyes. And then I can't remember what she says after that, but I almost read that like, and it's weird because we're getting a revival more or less 25 years later.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is crazy. 25 years ago this year, is when Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me was released. So and then when we have like those evil doppelgangers coming after them, I almost see that as like imitation television shows.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I don't know if I'm like making any sense, but it's like Twin Peaks will be back in 25 years, but in the meantime, there's going to be like copycat shows and shows that are inspired by our show and other things that will be here to try to get you, but then we're going to come back in 25 years. That's what I got from it. And I know that's completely abstract, and it couldn't possibly be their intention, because they had no idea the X-Files or Lost was going to come out.
Right. Yeah, this show is, I've said before, it is the spiritual father to shows that made their whole thing be like an arc-driven story. I don't think we would have Lost without this show. Speaking of, I don't know if I'm going to have a chance to say this again. There was some guy who I was reading, I don't remember if it was a review or if it was like a blog essay, but he was talking about Twin Peaks, and he was talking about how he was a fan of Twin Peaks when it was airing, and he was talking about this episode, how it infuriated him so much, because he said, imagine if you would in Lost, if Jack Shephard dies at the end of season 2 and is replaced by the smoke monster, and then that's how the series ended. Like, that's basically what it is. Like, that's a lot like what would have happened if, you were watching the show back then. And it's so crazy that people were watching this and they're like, okay, what's going to happen next? And then they don't get what happens next. Like, for us, it's not nearly as bad, because we get to have the movie that we're talking about, next week. Like, we get to indulge in all of this at our own leisure, and then we're getting a revival next year. Like, it's not nearly as bad for us, but people who were watching the show back then, like, this must have been mind-bogglingly awful. Like, I can't comprehend.
Oh, yeah, and I think, did I mention this to you, where, like, the movie was amongst the worst reviewed movies of all time upon release?
Yeah. And have you seen the movie yet?
I have not. I've rented it. I watched, like, the first 5 minutes to see if my DVD player on my computer was working. Okay. The opening scene is awesome with the television. That's cool.
Yeah, we'll be talking about it next week, but I was curious if you had seen it before, because I've seen it once, and so when we talk about it, will only be the second time that I've seen it. But yeah, like I just imagine, like, people who were watching the show when it came out, like, they must have been heartbroken when they found out this was canceled. And like, for me, I don't watch a whole lot of modern TV, and when I do, I usually wait until it's all done so I can just kind of go through it at my own speed. But like, the closest thing I can think of would be, I don't know if you ever watched it, but Terminator: The Sarah Connor Chronicles, I watched it, and season 2 ends on a pretty big cliffhanger, and then we don't get a conclusion to it. And so that's probably the closest thing that this generation has to something that Twin Peaks did, where like it's a big story, and then it ends on a big note, and then you're never going to get the conclusion to it. And I still don't know how much of this we are going to get followed up on in the revival. It's very interesting to see it'll be very interesting to see that.
It will be. Other things about this Red Room that I like is just getting a sense of what is going on with the spirits and the spirits that we've seen.
Yeah.
And if we had, like, and I think it's pretty much a foregone conclusion that we're going to be doing what we would do with Twin Peaks season 3 video, a la Let's Do It Again. Although for Twin Peaks, I think we should call it It's Happening Again, Twin Peaks season 3.
Kind of like the Giant.
It's happening again. Although that is the tagline on the poster of the revival.
Oh, so. It is? I didn't know.
Yeah, it's happening again, Twin Peaks. Like, oh, that's such a cool tagline. But regardless, like, I think that we're going to get more about the White Lodge in season 3.
Oh, yeah?
And that's what I think that weird, like, what you call them, like, from Marvel Comics, Infinity from Marvel Comics? Or what was it?
Infinity Stones?
No, like the guy with the stars in him.
Oh, Eternity,
yeah, Eternity from Marvel Comics. Like, we see like this weird, like, hooded figure that has stars in him, and he's like walking across a white void, and then the owl. Like, that was like a couple episodes ago. Yeah. That was 3 episodes back, I think. And I think that
I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch that episode, because I still don't really remember it. I'm gonna have to like look and see, and so it'll jog my memory. Because as I said when we were talking about that was one of those things that I think I just it was out of sight, out of mind, because I knew that it wasn't going to get, like, wrapped up, so I wasn't really paying much attention to it, but I need to kind of go back and look at that again.
Yeah, and it was like 2 cutaway shots of that, and I remember watching that thinking, what is that? And then the very next episode, Major Briggs had mentioned something about a Guardian of the Light, and I think that's what that was referring to, because when we see the bellhop and the giant say, hey, we're the same person, then we have the little man, and then Bob's in the Red Room too. I think all the spirits that we've seen thus far are residents of the Black Lodge.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And I think that Bob is like the Reaper of the Black Lodge almost.
Uh-huh.
Like he goes out and collects souls. All the doppelgangers that we see in the Black Lodge, they're all the people that Bob has either possessed or killed, and they all have like those glazed over gray eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that he's bringing in inhabitants, and I think that, this is just me theorizing and like spitballing, but what if like these are all residents of the Black Lodge, and then like Bob was like was one of the evil spirits in the Black Lodge, but he kind of got out of hand and like was just getting loose upon the world, and like the other residents of the Black Lodge tried to bring him in, and other things like that. And now that he's inside of Cooper, what if like the resident, like the people in the Black Lodge and like some other people are trying to get to the White Lodge to try to stop Bob? Like, what if that like happens? And I know this is all theoretical because none of that is in this episode, but this is stuff that was going through my mind as I was watching this 20-minute sequence.
Yeah. When I was watching this show, I had already seen Lost. I had already watched all of Lost. So I was bringing to it more a sense of you've got Mike and you've got Bob, and one of them is kind of a good spirit and one of them is kind of an evil spirit. And I wasn't really looking at it as anything beyond that. Like, the way you're describing it, I kind of like that idea of there's an entire pantheon of Twin Peaks, and we're just getting a glimpse of it with a couple of spirits here. But I was always looking at it as you've got a bad guy and you've got a less bad guy in Mike. And I really like the idea that there's more to it than that.
Yeah, and I'm so happy that anything's possible. It might happen. But other things in the Black Lodge, Wyndham Earl getting in over his head, like he's like the evilest of humanity, but even he's nothing compared to like the spirits in the Black Lodge.
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool, and the fire coming out of his head was a really neat special effect, and like the reversal, like they almost like did it in reverse, was really a unsettling visual.
Did you think, now that we've seen the conclusion to Wyndham Earl, do you think that it would have been better, instead of him, for some reason, searching for the Black Lodge, I still don't really know why he would be searching for the Black Lodge, instead of him just searching for the Black Lodge and it just happens to be in Twin Peaks, and so while he's here, he's going to be screwing with Dale Cooper, do you think, instead of that, do you think it would have been better if Wyndham Earl was like a servant to Bob in the same way that like Saruman is a servant to Sauron in Lord of the Rings? Like, he's secretly moving all these pieces around in the physical world. He's not necessarily possessed like Leland was, but he's, doing these things, and he's saying to himself, yes, master, I will do it. And then we find out here, oh, he's a servant of Bob, and then Bob kills him because he doesn't have any use. Do you think that would have worked better than what we got in this series with Wyndham Earl?
Not necessarily, actually. The closer we've gotten to the conclusion, the more I've liked Wyndham.
Okay.
And him, like, his obsession with the Black Lodge, and then he gets there only to find out that it's too much for him to handle. I kind of like that. And I like the way that ultimately wrapped up. And, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if when Bob's talking about, like, I'm going to take his soul because he can't take your soul, but then it turns out that Bob actually is inside. Like, that's a weird roundabout thing. But what if, like, that'd be a cool, like, way to approach Wyndham if I was to, like, reboot Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
But I kind of like what we did with him. And maybe now that I guess Bob has his soul, he can like wear Wyndham as a suit to go into the real world. But then why would he use Cooper? I don't know.
Yeah. I personally, like, I still haven't been 100% on board the Wyndham train this half of the season. So I think it would have been, and also coming from me, I'm much more of a fan of the supernatural stuff in this series. So I've always liked it whenever they do stuff with Bob in the Red Room. So I think it would have been cool if you could have had Wyndham Earl, who's a personal connection to Dale, but also, like, ever since he escaped from the insane asylum, he's, like, serving Bob, and you wouldn't even have to know that he's serving Bob until late in the game, but then that would be a way to connect him to all the supernatural stuff. I think it would have been cool, but I think that what they did could have been made to work if they had worked on it a little more, maybe refined it a little bit.
And I guess why I like it more than you do is because it's kind of lit a fire under the people writing the show to get us to the supernatural place faster.
Yeah.
Because if you didn't have Wyndham trying to find the Black Lodge, then you wouldn't have Cooper trying to find the Black Lodge to stop Wyndham from getting there, and you wouldn't get all this other information out of the Major.
Yeah.
So I thought it was a pretty neat way to get us to that place.
Yeah, fair enough.
I mentioned before that all the residents in like the Black Lodge that we've seen before, they all have like those gray eyes. Do you think that's like their souls in there? Because Bob has either killed or inhabited their bodies before.
This is gonna be a very mundane look into it, but I was just assuming they just did that because it's creepy. Like visually, it's very weird. That was kind of what I wasn't really sure what the deeper meaning was for their eyes looking like that. Because we don't always see it like that. Like when Dale is first here, and he's talking to the little man, and then Laura is there. She doesn't have the gray eyes, but then later when she's screaming, she has gray eyes, and then Leland has gray eyes. So like some of them have gray eyes, and sometimes they don't.
Wait, which ones did you say didn't?
At the very beginning, when she says "see you in 25 years," she has normal eyes, and then later when she's screaming and the lights are strobing, she has the gray eyes.
Yeah, but that's when I'm. Yeah, so that's because I think that's the real Laura Palmer, though. And
Okay.
then it's like a weird doppelganger because it's like an infected soul.
Okay.
Like a Bob infected soul, Abyss.
Yeah, it's possible.
BIS.
Like I don't know what's going on. Like that's part of the frustration of trying to discuss the Red Room, because like it leaves it just open enough that like it's really unclear what is going on. That could be a Bob infected Laura, or it could just be the same Laura, but she looks different because it would be creepy if she had gray contact lenses. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not
Right.
really sure what their intention is.
Okay, that's fair. I just like how interpretive and emotionally driven the Red Room is. Like it's all about emotional responses out of the audience member, and your interpretations leading to what any of it really means. And the difference between like this and something that doesn't have any effort put into it is, I think they give you enough pieces to try to put together what's going on.
Hmm.
Because they say doppelganger, and then that's when all the gray-eyed people start coming around.
You're right. Yeah.
And by the way, when they enter the Red Room, and there's that guy who's singing. That guy singing, he has a spotlight on him, but then you go to the wide shot while the strobes are going off, where it looks like everything is like going from black to like in light.
Yeah.
But except for him, so it's like he's in it's hard to explain, but it's such a neat visual.
Hmm.
It's so cool. And did you catch the credit at the end of this episode?
Where like instead of a portrait of Laura Palmer, it's like a cup of coffee and it's her face upside down in the coffee.
In the reflection of the coffee. At the end of the episode, like I actually watched through all of the credits, but it said under the sycamore trees, the lyrics were by David Lynch, and the music was conducted and composed by Angelo Badalamenti, but it said performed by, and I'm quoting it here, the legendary Jimmy Scott.
Uh-huh.
It didn't just say performed by Jimmy Scott, it said performed by the legendary Jimmy Scott. And I thought that was kind of cool. And by the way, that song was awesome.
Oh yeah, yeah. As soon as the episode was done, I went on YouTube and listened to it again.
It's so cool. And like I don't know what it is, something about like those curtains freak me out. Like when you see a silhouette behind those curtains, and then like something is about to come through. Like I think you see like Maddie's silhouette, or is it Laura's silhouette? And then when they finally come through, and then oh my god, the weird stuff where he starts bleeding right after Laura screams in his face for about 10 seconds,
Uh-huh.
and then he just like finally decides to leave, and then like the doppelganger Cooper catching up with him, and I think that's a great way of saying that, like, because what I interpreted is like the gray-eyed doppelgangers are like the Bob-infected souls of these people, so when you see Cooper's Bob-infected soul and it catches up with him, I think that's a really neat way of saying that Bob's got him.
Yeah. Yeah, and I really like, speaking of silhouettes, there's one point where Dale, he walks away, and then, like, the camera stays there, and I think Bob is, like, kneeling and he's laughing, and then we see another silhouette, like, running behind the curtains behind Bob, and then it's Dale, and he's, like, you know, like, kind of fighting with the curtains, and then he comes up and he's laughing, and that's one of the creepiest things the series has ever done.
Yeah, man. And also, it's great to see Ray Wise. He doesn't have much to do, but he just, he has to be creepy.
And I want you to remember his scene when we talk about Fire Walk with Me next week, because
Okay.
this is where I feel like David Lynch had things that he was doing with the series, and then when he did Fire Walk with Me, he went in an entirely different direction. specifically with the character of Leland Palmer. I also like Leland in this episode. He doesn't get much to do, like you said, but I liked him. But I do feel like that's worth mentioning now so that we can talk more about that next week.
All right, cool. I'll be sure to look into that. By the way, in that third episode, the very first Red Room scene,
Yeah.
we see like this weird thing flying behind the curtains.
Oh,
At
really?
one point. Yeah, it's like right when it's in Cooper's dream and he's sitting there, and it shows a wide shot of them all sitting and nobody's talking, and then you see like this weird triangle-shaped thing flying behind the curtains. It's like a shadow.
Okay, I don't remember that.
And I thought it was like some bird outside, because later in that he says where I'm from, there's always birds singing pretty songs or something like that.
Yeah.
And I just took that as a bird, but I mean, I wonder what a bird looks like in the Black Lodge. That'd be freaking creepy.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember that. That's one of those things where I really need to go back and look at some of that stuff, like the first Red Room episode, and then the Guardian of the Light and stuff like that.
Right. Anything else you wanted to talk about regarding this episode?
Not that I can think of. I liked it. It kind of, on the one hand, I'm kind of relieved that we're no longer going to be talking about Twin Peaks because it's been frustrating at times. But at the other hand, I'm kind of sad because at times this series was really captivating, and this was one of those episodes. And it's a mixed bag of emotions for me. At times I'm going to be like, oh boy, I'm so glad we're not having to deal with Josie and the Cougar Lady and James and Donna. But then on the other hand, like the Red Room and, Killer Bob and stuff like that, like all that stuff I really love about this series.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, I liked the series more than you did.
That might be true, yeah, because I like the really good stuff about the series, but then when it gets bad, like it really, kind of brings me down to a dark place, if you will.
Yeah, no, I like, for me, when it comes to like finishing something, I get so sad at the idea of it all being finished that I just end up putting it off and putting it off and putting it off, and then I end up not finishing it. So I was very hesitant to press the button on this final episode, but I'm glad I watched it. It's a good episode. You have to keep in mind that this is very much the finale of a season 2 and not a series finale trying to bring closure to everything, but I'm very glad we're getting a revival season. And not because I want it to be over necessarily, I want it to be over. I don't want this to just keep going on and on and on. I want us to have a definitive ending of Twin Peaks because David Lynch is an older guy. A lot of the cast is older now, and I don't know how long we can keep this going for. And with stuff like Star Wars and Star Trek and so many, and like even Harry Potter, there's no such thing as an ending anymore. I would just very much like in this time of brand recognition, just Twin Peaks to finally give us an ending that we can all be happy about, and then we can just binge watch the first 2 seasons, watch Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me if we so desire, and then watch the revival and just binge it all together and just have a definitive story there. I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah, I think this is not a series that really works as an ongoing thing that can just go for as long as it needs to go. You have things like Doctor Who. If the showrunner of Doctor Who gets tired, you just bring in another guy. If the actor playing the Doctor gets tired, you bring in another guy. It's not something that has a definitive ending where it needs to stop at a certain point. Twin Peaks is definitely something that needs to stop at a certain point. It doesn't work as well when you're just trying to keep it going. So I'm with you. With the revival, I really do hope that it is the final season of the series, the final installment of this universe, if you will.
Yeah.
But
and yeah. I'm glad we get more Albert.
Yeah, me too. I'm going to be looking forward to, and that's another one of those things I love. Like, there's things about the series I love. Albert, I'm kind of sad that we didn't get him at some point in this final 2-parter, but there's really nothing that he could have done. It wouldn't have worked. But yeah, so that's all that we have about the ongoing Twin Peaks series, but we are going to be doing a few more odds and ends episodes. Next week we'll be talking about Fire Walk with Me. I'm looking forward to that. And then we'll be doing at least one episode where we're going to be kind of, Connor and I will each separately be kind of talking about what we would have done with a season 3 of this series. I've already got some notes written down. I'm excited about that. We talked about maybe doing like a top 5 characters, top 5 episodes, something like that. So we've got a few more episodes in store for you guys in the future. So this isn't exactly the end. It's close to the end, though.
Yeah.
Shed those tears. Don't shed those tears. We're still going to be hanging out for a little while. So I am the Comics Kid 2099.
And I am Connor Nielsen.
And we will see you guys next time.